rightness of repairing the damage. We have to understand the drivers in terms of the human psyche and the human condition, because this is not simply a matter of coming up with some policies and some practices, some laws on the book, and some resources. If we don't go to the root cause in terms of the human psyche and the human condition, we will only be doing window dressing. So it is truly an honor to be able to be on this commission. I thank you for this opportunity, and I turn it back over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grills. Lisa Holder, your introduction, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Holder. I'm truly honored to be a part of this esteemed group of activists, scholars, lifelong soldiers of justice. I'm humbled as I listen to your depth of knowledge and to your commitment, and I am inspired by the work that you have done. I am always inspired by Dr. Shirley Weber and her visionary activism. And I want to thank the governor for his bravery and commitment to this task force. I also want to thank the Attorney General and the DOJ for all of the support that they have already provided and for their partnership. I come to this work as a lifelong activist, social justice warrior, and litigator, and civil rights attorney. And what I bring to this task force is my experience of over 20 years as a civil rights litigator. I currently run my own civil rights practice based in Los Angeles, where I focus on police misconduct, litigation, and constitutional policing. I do wage and hour class actions and workplace discrimination cases. And my office also focuses on education equity and bringing equity to the public education system and helping to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. I also have the pleasure of partnering with the Equal Justice Society, a phenomenal nonprofit organization based in Oakland that works to transform the nation's consciousness on race through litigation, the arts, and education. I've also had the privilege of doing legislative advocacy work in Sacramento over the last few years. During my tenure as the legal director of Equal Justice Society, I worked with legislators and senators and assembly people in Sacramento to draft laws to help to reduce implicit bias in various industries, including in the industries of judgeships, in lawyering, and in medical health, in the medical health field. And working on legislation to ensure that professionals in those fields are being educated on implicit bias and how to provide services to the community with less biased outcomes. I also do education. I periodically teach the Civil Rights Clinic at UCLA Law, and I also educate folks in private industry and in nonprofits on implicit bias through trainings and helping these industries find diversity solutions. Similar to Dr. Grills, I'm coming at this from a very personal place. I'm so thankful to my ancestors who survived so much trauma, so much pain, so much tragedy, so much brutality, so that I could live, so that I could be alive today, so that I could not only survive the way they did, but so that I could thrive. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, and I am ready to fight to deliver them, our ancestors, justice. What I know after 20 years of activism is that there can be no reconciliation on race in America without truth. There can be no peace with respect to race in America without justice. And reparations is a critical pathway to authentic reconciliation and lasting peace. That's why the issue of reparations deserves the attention, exploration, and systematic evaluation that this task force is designed to provide. I am honored to be a part of this truth and reconciliation process, and I thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Holder. Moving right along, Assemblymember Reginald Jones Sawyer, your introduction.
Hi. All right, hopefully you can hear me. Hi. Again, I want to thank the governor, the speaker, the president pro tem, Tony Atkins, my entire assembly colleagues, the Senate, all the committee chairs. And as a former chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, who first supported Dr. Weber in this, I want to just thank them all. And the reason I mention this again, and people mention again, you don't know how hard it is to get a law done. And a substantive law like this was extremely difficult. And it took the courage and determination of Dr. Weber to make this happen. And we should thank her and thank her and thank her every day that we can. I represent Assembly District 59, which is South Los Angeles, Huntington Park, Florence, Firestone. And I am also the chair of public safety. And when I got elected in 2012, there were over 140,000 men and women housed in corrections in our prison system, the largest prison plantation on the planet. And over the years, I worked really hard to dismantle that because it has such an adverse effect on the African-American community and the Latino community. People were poor. That number has dropped down below 100,000 because of our efforts to make sure that they don't recidivate and go back and forth into the prison system. Before I leave, I plan to close 5 prisons. We've never closed a prison. Never. We've always built prisons. And so we're reversing this criminal justice system, which has not been justice for us and been unequal. And now, when I look back on as I was raised with my uncle was one of the Little Rock Nine, when the 9 kids integrated Central High School in 1957. He was beaten and kicked, all sorts of atrocities he went through so that I could go to any school that I wanted to. And in the middle of the night to tell her, get your son out of school or your grandson will never make it to school. I was born in 57. That grandson was me. So every day since my grandmother told me that story, because I was a little bit of a mess up in college, but once she told me that story, I had a renewed revitalization in that the education that I was going to receive at USC was a gift of courage, a gift from my family that I couldn't mess up. And my grandmother looked me straight in the eye and she told me, you have no right to give up this education, especially what this family went through to do that. And so I went on and graduated. And even now I'm at age 60 something, I'm in a doctoral program at USC. And people ask me why I do that and why I'm doing that. Have you accomplished everything you wanted to? And I tell them this personal for me, because my grandmother is up in heaven and those individuals, those Klan members and segregationists who aren't, I get to poke my finger in their eye because they try to stop me from getting an education. Like they try to stop all African Americans from getting their education. And so I now know part of my purpose of being here in the legislature is about reparations, is about doing something for our people. And I read something recently from Thomas Paine, not T-Pain, the rapper, but Thomas Paine, one of the founders of this country, who was a radical, grassroots-oriented founding father, who said, "We have the power to begin the world over again. Reparations gives us the power to begin the world again." This is an individual who in the 1700s if you think about people taking away our voting rights, want to take away all the things that people have fought for, especially Dr. King. And so on how African Americans can move to the next level. We're all suffering, even to this day, of PTSD from slavery, post-traumatic slavery disorder. Let me say that again, post-traumatic slavery disorder. And those of you who came on and talked about the mental health of what our race has gone through, it's really important that we don't forget that. The trauma that is still in us from hundreds and hundreds of years of us being abused, of us dying, being lynched, all of those things to keep us basically in our place. We now, because of the descendants of slaves, we now have an opportunity to reverse that I'm looking forward to is that it's sustainable. You know, you heard about the 40 acres and the mule. I would say keep the mule, give me more land, because a mule depreciates, a car depreciates. We got to get away from that. And whatever we do with this, whatever we decide, it has to be sustainable. It's not one check and done. We have to come up with ways to make sure that the educational system works for us. We close the wealth gap between us. We make sure we have property, because that is the wealth gap. And the economists that are probably on here will tell you that's what's keeping us down. And so this is definitely the time where we're trying men's soul, but most of the time, but this is the time that we need to step up. This is the time that we save African American souls, that we take us to the next level. And so I'm honored to be on this committee. And I would also tell you, look to not just me, but Senator Bradford, because you also have something that's probably unique in some of the other committees. You have two individuals, 2 out of 120 people that can make a law. So if we need to back up what we want, back up what we need, we can make a law. The governor can't make a law. We can, and make sure that this is sustainable. And if we have to put that in writing to make sure they don't take it away from us, like they're trying to do with our voting rights right now, we can do that here in California, because that's the most important thing for me, sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Jones Sawyer. We will now move on to Dr. Javon Scott Lewis with your introductory remarks.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Javon Scott Lewis, Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Geography at UC.
Three remarks.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Javon Scott Lewis, Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Geography at UC Berkeley, where I also co-lead the Economic Disparities Research Cluster at Berkeley's Othering and Belonging Institute. I want to, thank everybody who got us here. I want to especially thank Secretary of State Weber, really for taking up the mantle, right, of Belinda Sutton, who in 1783, 80 years before the Emancipation Proclamation, went to the Massachusetts General Court demanding reparations from her enslaver. So what that tells us is that, right, we have been working towards this for some time, and even prior to abolition. So my work generally is concerned with race inequality and the consequences of underdevelopment and poverty, which has everything to do with the terms for which we are looking to demand reparations. For the past 7 years, I have been doing research in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that has been involved with understanding both the conditions and the processes that created the historic Greenwood community, and also the devastating violences, multiple violences that included not just the race massacre of 1921, but the processes of urban renewal that have followed since then that undid the accomplishments of Greenwood. Moreover, I am concerned today in my research in Tulsa, Oklahoma with the Black communities that live today. Those who are located not in historic Greenwood any longer, but in North Tulsa. People who live in places like Sunset Apartments, just north of OSU Tulsa. People who are still living within the wake of the multiple violences that the Black community here in Tulsa, Oklahoma have faced. I am here to say that reparations cannot just be, the kind of final provision of the 14th Amendment. Reparations must be that and then some. It is about understanding that the process and the policy of reparation must be led by the sense of repair. We have to understand not only the conditions that have brought about the disinvestment, the disenfranchisement of Black communities across this country, but also the terms by which those communities can feel healed and repaired. In other words, what does it feel to be repaired? That is the task that we have. And so I believe that we have to be innovative, creative, and bold, just as Secretary Robert demanded that we be bold in thinking about that process. In Reconstruction, many of the Reconstruction officers wanted to know what Black people wanted. What they said was that they wanted land, tools, and effectively to be left on their own. They wanted, in other words, to be able to devise their own future. And so I believe that this task force is required to really think very hard about what Black people want and to marshal all of our energies and labors and efforts and resources to help satisfy that. So again, I'm really honored to be here and to serve on this task force and to serve the communities of the Black communities of the state of California. And hopefully we can go on to create a model for a national term of reparation, which is also due. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Javon Scott Lewis. We will move on to Monica Montgomery Stepp for your introductory remarks.
Monica, is your audio working?
While we move on to figuring out our technical difficulties, we will go instead to Camila Moore for your introductory remarks.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor. Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. My name is Camila Victoria Moore. First, I would like to take this time to thank my ancestors and then my family, friends, and colleagues for their unwavering guidance and support. I would also like to thank Governor Gavin Newsom, Attorney General Bonta, Speaker Anthony Rendon for appointing me, Secretary of State Shirley Weber, and President Pro Tem Tony Atkins. Aguila Victoria Moore, and I am an attorney with a specialization in intellectual property and entertainment transactions. I earned a Juris Doctorate from Columbia Law School in New York City, a Master of Laws degree in International Criminal Law from the University of Amsterdam, and a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA. I am also a repository justice scholar and proudly serve as advisory board members for two grassroots organizations, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, or CJEC, and the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants Los Angeles chapter. NAASD and CJEC work closely with then Assemblymember Shirley Weber to craft the crucial and first of its kind specificity language that is reflected in AB 3121 and ultimately ensured its passage through coordinating public comment, other forms of testimony, and strategic outreach to key legislators. As a law student, I contributed to human rights reports related to domestic and international human rights issues, including but not limited to racial inequality in Brazil, the human right to sanitation in Lowndes County, Alabama, United States, and the human right to remedy for Indigenous Black women affected by racialized gender violence in Papua New Guinea. While studying abroad at the University of Amsterdam, I began writing a master thesis exploring the intersections between international law and reparatory justice for the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, and their legacies. I am looking forward to serving as a task force member, and ultimately, I look forward to beginning and contributing to substantive discussions surrounding the importance of reparations for Black Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. Namely, I am looking forward to ensuring that any reparations package that the task force develops fully comports with international law, which mandates reparations come in the form of compensation, restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. Thank you. It is an honor.
Including but not limited to racial inequality in Brazil, the human rights of sanitation.
Thank you very much, Camila Moore. We will try next now to return to Monica Montgomery Stepp to see if we've worked out the technical difficulty kinks on our end. Monica?
At the University of Amsterdam, I began writing a master thesis exploring the intersections between international law and reparatory justice for the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, and their legacy. I am looking forward to serving as a task force member, and ultimately, I look forward to beginning and contributing to substantive discussions surrounding the importance of reparations for Black Americans who are descendants of persons.
Okay, so it appears that the answer is not yet. So we will again skip Monica and instead move ahead to Don Tamaki. Don, your introduction.
Thank you, and condolences, Monica. I know how that feels. First, I want to say to the members of the task force, each of you so accomplished. having devoted much of your lives to the pursuit of social justice. Whether as civil rights icons, as elected leaders, professors, activists, scholars, I really am honored to be among you. I also want to express my thanks to Secretary Weber for authoring the bill and for her moving words. Thank you, Governor Newsom, the appointment staff, the selection committee, and the hard work of the Attorney General's office under Rob Bonta, especially the Civil Rights Enforcement Division, who have been laboring since, I understand, November of 2020 to ensure that the task force has a running start. As a Japanese American, I want to say that this groundbreaking study of and recommendations with respect to reparations is long, long overdue. While the oppression imposed on African Americans is unparalleled in its breadth, in brutality, in duration, and continuity, and anti-Black racism, I believe, is uniquely pernicious and unrelenting. Asian Americans still know something about discrimination. Following Roosevelt's signing of Executive Order 9066, the government surrounded Tanforan Racetrack in San Bruno, which is just south of San Francisco, with barbed wire and machine gun towers, and forced at gunpoint about 7,800 Americans of Japanese ancestry and crammed them into horse stalls, my parents included, while 10 more permanent American-style concentration camps were being constructed from California to Arkansas, which ultimately in which ultimately 120,000 Japanese Americans were confined. Despite being incarcerated, my father was drafted into the U.S. Army, and after war's end, my parents bought a house in Oakland. Despite that, he was a veteran. Some white neighbors came calling, demanded that they move, and the real estate agent who sold them the house was fired. But unlike African American veterans, at least they were able to get a conventional bank loan. When Dr. Brown was talking about urban renewal, redevelopment in San Francisco, the San Francisco Japantown community was a part of that decimation. It used to be 36 blocks until the city declared it a blighted area and declared it a slum, as Dr. Brown referred to. And ultimately, Japanese Americans called their forced eviction from properties that they owned the second forced removal. I believe Senator Bradford also made the same reference to what's happened all over the country, but certainly in Southern California as well. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Grills for talking about the underlying causes of America's pathology, so to speak. In reopening the Korematsu case, we represented Fred Korematsu in the 1980s, reopening the 1944 Supreme Court case that upheld the legality and rounding up of Japanese Americans, and one of the worst decisions the court has ever rendered, right up there with Plessy versus Ferguson and Dred Scott. We were surprised to discover secret intelligence reports from the Navy, the FBI, and the FCC, which stated that the Army's claims of rounding up Japanese Americans were falsehoods and lies, and that Japanese Americans had done no wrong and certainly posed no threat. I think what Dr. Grills was referring to is that when the culture of prejudice becomes so strong and overwhelming, facts don't matter, the law doesn't matter, and the Constitution doesn't matter. And so we've seen that play out in what happened to Japanese Americans. We're watching it in real time as the inquiry in Tulsa proceeds. And I completely agree with her as that underlying value system and psychology really needs to be looked at. Well, personally, if it wasn't for the Black Civil Rights Movement and the inspiration of Dr. Martin Luther King and Black lawyers who were role models for me when I was growing up in Oakland, I probably would not have become an attorney. And for most other Asian Americans, they or their ancestors immigrated after the passage of the Immigration Reform Act of 1965. 1995, which eliminated racist quotas that would have otherwise barred their entry. So Asian Americans, as with other marginalized groups, owe so much to the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, including their very presence here. Moreover, the 18-year campaign for Japanese American redress and reparations was inspired by African Americans, demanding that the nation live up to its espoused principles. Black leaders like Congressman Ron Dellon supported our cause. And while we rejoiced when the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 was passed, it also rightly prompted the question by African Americans, what about us? What about us? To that question, the Japanese American community looks forward to sharing our experience, and particularly the power of acknowledgement, which some of the speakers have talked about. When the pain and the harm is brought out in the open and acknowledged. Many Asian American organizations stand poised to support the efforts of this task force and to expose the model minority myth that has been used to pit racial groups against each other. Furthermore, many Americans of all races know that each time that America has chosen to be more inclusive and acknowledge and repair injustice, it has become stronger to the benefit of us all. So I'm very much looking forward to learning from each of you, the members of this task force, and working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Tamaki. We will now go once again with our fingers crossed to Monica Montgomery Step, who I see on our screen. Thank you, Monica.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, third time is a charm. It had to be one of us, and it was me. Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Montgomery Step. I am council member for District 4 in the city of San Diego, which is our historically Black community in San Diego. Certainly the demographics have changed because we have experienced eminent domain. We have also experienced a freeway being built through our thriving community decades ago, and we certainly see the impact of that now. I want to thank Dr. Weber, who at the time that this bill passed was my assembly member, and also is certainly a mentor of mine, and many of us as we're growing up in San Diego. In addition to that, President Pro Tem Atkins for the appointment to this task force, in addition to the governor, and all who were involved in getting this bill across the finish line is certainly long overdue. I maintain an advocacy role in San Diego in many different ways at the ACLU, leading the local campaign on bail reform. As a staffer for the former council member, I did walk out of the office in protest when she indicated, after we received a study on racial profiling that determined what the community members had been telling us about being racially profiled by officers. And she stated that Black people deserve to be arrested because Black people commit all the crimes. I left that office in protest. I ended up running against her. I went against the entire establishment who does tend to hold those white supremacist values up. Went against the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, labor and business in San Diego. It was a complete community effort, as was this bill, and I am very grateful to be holding the spot for such a time as this. You know, in San Diego, working on a lot of issues that impact African American people, and particularly criminal justice issues, it does always feel like something is missing. And that is because as many policies as we pass, there are also matters of the heart. And there is also, as Dr. Grills was speaking of earlier, there is the why. And so I will continue to do the work of passing policies, understanding though that we have so much work to do when it comes to repairing the state of African American people in this state. Hopefully, we will be an example nationwide. I think that is one of the goals, and I'm very, very honored to be here serving on this historic task force. I also view this personally. I watched my father every day as an entrepreneur get up and work toward his dream of building generational wealth for his family, and being held back by the system that I'm now a part of, and that I can now sit here and make it different for my brother and my nephew and all those that are coming behind us and will benefit from the work that we are doing here today. So thank you, everyone. I'm honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to this work.
Thank you, Council Member. We very much appreciate your patience with us this morning. We will move right along to our next agenda item, which will begin with a brief presentation of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. On your screen, you will see some slides. We've also made these available on our website, and we will endeavor to move as quickly through them as we can this morning to get us back on schedule. Jesslyn, slide. So we'll be first doing an overview in the purpose and application of the Bagley-Keene Act to state bodies. We will talk about what is a meeting and what is not a meeting. And then we will talk about scheduling and conducting a public meeting, closed sessions, and end with some key takeaways to keep in mind as we move forward. Slide. The policy behind the Bagley-Keene Act is to make sure that the actions of state bodies happen openly and that the public is ensured a seat at the table. The goals are transparency and the opportunity for participation. The Act does this by requiring the meetings be open to the public and that the public be given advance notice of meetings and a chance to comment at meetings. The Bagley-Keene Act applies to state bodies, including every state board, commission, or similar multi-member body created by the statute or California Constitution. This task force was created by Government Code Section 8301.1 when AB3121 was adopted in 2020, and that is a state body subject to the Act. Slide. The next couple of slides address what makes a meeting for the purposes of the Act. A meeting occurs when a majority of the members of a body gather or communicate to discuss, hear, or deliberate on the state body's business. Declan, can you go back a slide, please? So, two things are important to remember. One, there has to be a majority of members, which in the task force's case is anything more than 5, because there are a total of 9 appointed members. And if a body has vacancies, and we certainly hope that this task force never does, not count in figuring out what is the majority. 2, and we will talk about this more later, the Act was specifically amended a few years ago to define a meeting to not only be a physical gathering, but also a collective communication, including by email or phone. This is also known as a serial meeting, and it is one of the most important concepts that this task force needs to understand, namely that we can risk inadvertently violating Bagley-Keene when we communicate by email or forward communications to multiple members of the task force. So again, a meeting is a gathering or communication between a majority of members to hear, discuss, or deliberate on task force issues, and it includes all phases of decision making. Slide. Here are some examples of the types of decision-making and actions that are subject to the Act because they involve task force business. If any of these involve a majority of task force members, whether collectively at once or serially, they are not permitted outside of a public hearing and may only be discussed at a noticed public meeting. Those include clarifying the task force's jurisdiction, conversations to facilitate agreement or compromise, conversations that advance the resolution of any issue, and any aspect of the deliberative process. Slide. And again, we remind you that the prohibition in the Act on Serial Communications applies to all forms of communication. And we've included a number of graphics on this slide to really stress that point. These typically arise in connection with emails, telephone calls, or text messages between members. And a series of individual communications between one person and another task force member can result in a serial meeting. Slide. Here are some examples of serial communications. A chain of communications, either directly or through personal intermediaries or tech devices, by a majority of members to discuss, deliberate, or take any action on any item of business. Even if communications do not take place at the same time and place, and each communication involves less than a majority of members, if the series of communications, when taken as a whole, involves a majority, it may violate the Act. Slide. Here are some things to keep in mind when communicating with fellow task force members. First, do not talk with other members about informational memos or agenda items outside of a properly noticed public meeting. Members may engage in purely social conversations with other members. A majority of the members may attend conferences or similar events that are open to the public and of general interest, purely social or ceremonial events, local public meetings, and open and public meetings of another state body, as long as members do not discuss task force matters among themselves. Slide. Here are some things to keep in mind when communicating with the public. Members may communicate individually with members of the public to share the work of the task force, indicate whether the views expressed are those of the task force or their own, and listen to comments from the public. Members must not indicate to the public how they intend to vote on a matter pending before the task force. Slide. There is a staff briefing exception that will apply to your team here at the TMJ. Staff may brief or respond to questions from individual task force members. Our team may not share communications from a task force member with any other task force member. And a good rule of thumb here is please do not reply all. Slide. Now we're going to talk about what is not a meeting. Slide. A meeting is not a communication between a task force member and any other person, as long as it is not used to circumvent the serial meeting requirement. Slide. Some other examples include conferences that are open to the public, open meetings of other public bodies, or open subcommittee meetings of another state body, and social events. Slide. We'll now talk about scheduling and conducting a public meeting. Slide. In general, each public meeting needs to be subject to notice and an agenda. Both must be posted at least 10 calendar days before the meeting. And both will be posted to the task force's website, as was done in preparation for this meeting. A state body may hold meetings with less than 10 days calendar notice in two situations. First, special meetings, and second, emergency meetings. We do not anticipate that either of these situations will occur during the life of the task force, but we will respond appropriately if they do. The notice must be provided in writing to anyone who requests a copy, and the agenda must include a brief description of each specific matter. Anyone may request to receive notices for all meetings of the task force, and this is done via our website. Slide. The public has certain rights under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. First, they have the right to participate at public meetings without identification and subject to reasonable time limits, like those that we have today. Second, they have the right to access public meeting records, although some records may be exempt from disclosure. And third, they have the right to monitor votes of each task force member, which is why we'll be voting by roll call in general today and moving forward in our meetings. Importantly here, the task force is not required to respond to comments from the public, only to listen to them. The task force may send information to the members without sharing it with the public. However, some documents may be subject to being made public upon request, and records exempt from disclosure under the Public Records Act remain exempt from disclosure, even if they are considered or discussed at a meeting. Slide. With COVID and Executive Order N-29-20, certain rules relating to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act have been eased during the pandemic, and meetings can be held entirely remotely, as we are doing today. Under those circumstances, there is no physical location to make documents previously distributed to the task force members available to the public. Accordingly, and although not specifically required, the task force will consider posting on its website any materials members receive before a meeting, which we have done with the materials that are being presented today. When the executive order is lifted, we will return to in-person meetings. Slide. We will now be discussing what can happen in a closed session. Slide. Certain matters may be discussed in a closed session. Those include personnel matters, matters affecting individual privacy, administrative disciplinary matters, pending litigation, responding to a confidential final draft of an audit record, and threat of criminal or terrorist activity. Importantly here, a state body, like the task force, cannot schedule a closed session independently of a noticed open meeting of the body. And if a closed session does occur, the state body is required to designate a staff person to attend the closed session and to record in a book a record of topics discussed and decisions made. That record in the book is available only to task force members, or if there is a legal challenge, to a court of general jurisdiction. Information received or discussed during a closed session cannot be disclosed to outside parties. And even though closed session itself and what is discussed is confidential, the state body must generally disclose in an open meeting the general nature of the items to be discussed. Slide. As we come to a close, we're going to share some final summary and takeaways that we ask the task force to keep in mind moving forward. Slide. First, when the task force meets to gather information, deliberate, or make a decision, the Bagley-Keene Act requires that the public have a seat at the table in most instances. Second, serial meetings conducted outside of a noticed public meeting that ultimately involve the majority of the task force members frustrate the Act's goals of transparency and may violate the law. Third, the Act's requirement for a 10-day notice and agenda and public testimony and the conduct of open meetings ensure the public's right of participation in the task force's consensus building process. A member may individually contact DOJ staff to ask questions or gather information about an upcoming item, so long as the member and staff do not share these conversations with other members outside of a properly noticed meeting. When a member receives information from staff, these do not communicate with other members about that information. If information is sent by email to all members, these do not reply all. And again, a member may communicate individually with members of the public to share the work of the task force, indicate whether the views expressed are those of the task force or their own, and listen to comments from the public. Please do not discuss task force business with more than one other member outside of a public meeting to avoid creating an inadvertent advisory body. And again, the majority of the task force may be present at social events, meetings of other public bodies, and public conferences, but may not discuss task force business outside of a properly noticed task force meeting. We'll now pause here for any questions related to Bagley-Keene. Okay,
Hello?
yes, Member Sawyer.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can't do. Is what can we do? I come from a body where you can have an individual, a group, anybody come to you and express their opinion on a bill, on a budget issue, and things of that nature. The way I'm reading what you're saying is your interpretation of Beckley Keene is they can't do it, or they need to go through you, or we need to have you present. I don't want to break any of staff laws, but
Thank you for that question.
how do we make sure we're as transparent as possible? I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you for that question, Member Jones Sawyer. Again, you can interact with members of the public. When you do so, you need to be clear on whether you are expressing the views of the task force or yourself individually when you are interacting. And you cannot indicate how you will vote on a matter or an item that is coming before the task force. But you can certainly communicate with members of the public.
Okay, again, if someone comes to my office and I'm for a bill, I can communicate that. So are you saying that the legislature is out of compliance?
I'm saying that in the guidance that our office regularly provides to state bodies all across California, we share that board members, commission members, task force members should not indicate to members of the public outside of a public meeting how they are going to vote on an item of official business.
Maybe I need to talk to our lawyer and see what their opinion is. That
I
sounds.
would just note it, Member Jones Sawyer, that the rules that are applicable to the state legislature are different than the rules that are in the Beckley Keene Open Meeting Act applicable to state bodies.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for your question. I will pause here for any additional questions from the task force members. Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is an overview of AB 3121. Thank you.
Can I have sheet real quick before we do that? I'm just trying to get a run of show right now. How long is this going to take? Because I have to be on the floor in 5 minutes. And I thought there was a vote action that we needed to take.
Thank you again for your patience. I believe that was Senator Bradford.
That's correct.
Senator, we've been in communication with your staff. The task force member introductions took a little bit longer than we had budgeted. And so
that's my call right now.
Understood. So we will continue to be in communication with your staffer to reach you when we need you for a vote. The upcoming vote will be on the next agenda item, the leadership selection for the task force. Group?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kamalu Kaur Singh, and I'm a Deputy Attorney General in the Civil Rights Enforcement Section of the California Department of Justice, where I am assisting with legal and administrative support for this task force. I will be presenting a summary of the requirements of AB 3121, the law that governs this task force. As a courtesy warning, I would like to inform you that there will be photos shown throughout my presentation which are related to incidents of racial violence. You can access the photos and PowerPoint shown here on our AB 3121 website. I will summarize the law's legislative findings, its purpose, the duties, membership, and powers of the task force, the consideration of a state-level reparations scheme, and the task force's administration and termination. The photo shown here depicts the Ku Klux Klan engaging in cross-burning, an act of racial terror. What is so important about this photo is that it was taken in 1980 in a suburb outside of Sacramento. It highlights California's recent racist past that is not often recognized or discussed in formal narratives of California history. I would like to acknowledge the valuable contributions of countless civil rights activists, advocates, legislators, and community stakeholders who have advocated for reparations for the Black community for decades. It is due to the work of these individuals that the task force has access to a treasure trove of resources and is well situated to be able to do the important work ahead. AB3121 was introduced February 21st, 2020 by then Assembly Member and now Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, who you heard from earlier today. It was signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom, who you also heard from earlier today on September 30th, 2020. AB 3121 makes a number of legislative findings which can be found at the beginning of the bill. AB 3121 states that the U.S. government protected and supported slavery through its laws and the Constitution. The bill further states that slavery was an immoral and inhumane deprivation of life. Pictured here is Mifflin Gibbs, a civil rights activist from San Francisco who became the first Black elected municipal judge in the country. He helped fund the legal case of an enslaved person named Archie Lee. Mr. Lee was brought to California by his slave owner, but escaped. Initially, he was declared free, but later he was returned to slavery by the California Supreme Court. Mr. Gibbs, pictured here, helped raise money for Mr. Lee's case, which eventually resulted in his freedom. The legislative findings of the bill state that so much evidence exists today which documents the system of discrimination created during slavery and maintained for centuries after. U.S. institutions have continued to benefit from the destruction of Black life. This photo is a clear example of this. After slavery was formally abolished, tens of thousands of Black people were arrested on false or petty charges. They were forced to work without pay as convicts, a form of re-enslavement. The Imperial Sugar Company is one corporation that benefited from this re-enslavement. It operated in California in the late 1990s and continues to operate successfully nationally today. The effects of systemic racism continue to be felt, as Attorney General Bonta stated, today and every day. This has resulted in enormous wealth disparities between Black and white Americans. As you can see from this graph, these disparities exist even when Black and white Americans are at the same education level. Now I will discuss the purpose of the task force. Per AB 3121, this task force will study and develop proposals to address slavery, to address discrimination that is explicitly supported by law, de jure discrimination, and to address discrimination that is not explicitly supported by law but still exists, which is de facto discrimination. The task force must also address the lingering effects of slavery on Black people in California. One of these effects is segregation in education. In 2019, a court ordered the Sausalito Marin City School District to desegregate based on an investigation conducted by the Civil Rights Enforcement Section of the Attorney General's Office. The task force must also address how this country has denied and buried the true nature of slavery and discrimination against African Americans. The task force must develop reparations proposals addressing societal institutions that benefited from slavery and continue to benefit today. For example, Penn Mutual Life Insurance Company, which operates today in California, wrote insurance policies for slaveholders to insure enslaved people, which they considered property. As of 2019, Penn Mutual had $3.7 billion in revenue. Among the many duties of the task force, the first is to accurately summarize and describe the institution of slavery. In the state of California, there were prominent and powerful pro-slavery forces in the state legislature and judiciary. In 1852, slaveholders from South Carolina and Florida petitioned the state assembly to establish a permanent slave colony in California. Biddy Mason, pictured here, was brought to California by a slave owner. She continued to experience enslavement in California for 5 years, even though it was supposedly a free state. Mason eventually sued her owner and won her own freedom in court in 1856. The task force is required to identify and describe federal and state laws that discriminate against Black people and descendants of enslaved people today. This photograph depicts a protest in the aftermath of the death of Stephon Clark, an unarmed Black man killed by police in his grandmother's backyard. According to the Racial Identity Profiling Advisory Board report from 2020, in California, individuals perceived to be Black were searched by the police at nearly 3 times the rate of individuals perceived to be white. The task force must recommend remedies which address international standards of reparations and recommend a formal apology on behalf of the people of California. The task force must also develop proposals to eliminate California laws and policies that continue to discriminate against Black communities. The task force must recommend remedies to reverse the injuries sustained by Black communities. The task force must determine how compensation for injuries should be calculated, distributed, and who is eligible to receive it. The task force must also recommend how the California public can be educated of the findings it makes. A report must be submitted to the state legislature by June 1st, 2022. The membership of the task force. We heard the members of the task force introduce themselves earlier, so I will now summarize the legal requirements for their appointment. There are 9 members appointed to the task force who come from diverse backgrounds. We heard them speak earlier today. They will serve for the life of the task force until it sunsets. The task force will be able to hold hearings with only 5 people, as that constitutes a quorum. Later in today's meeting, the task force will elect a chair and a vice chair. The state legislature has set a limit of 10 public hearings for the task force. The task force has the power to hold public hearings at any time and anywhere in California. This power is currently subject to the executive order to hold public hearings due to COVID-19. When that executive order lifts, the task force will resume in-person meetings, which the DOJ staff will plan with the chair and vice chair, as you'll hear later. The task force has a power to request testimony, document production, and issue subpoenas. The task force may also request information from state agencies. The task force will receive the administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the DOJ, which is why I am doing this presentation. The task force may also compensate personnel and enter into contract. AB3121 specifically states that any reparations provided by the state of California will not replace federal reparations. Finally, the task force automatically sunsets on July 1st, 2023, which is the statutory deadline. It is a great privilege and honor to assist this historic task force in working to advocate for reparations that are long overdue. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation.
When that executive order lifts, the task force will review in-person meetings, which the DOJ staff will plan for the chair and vice chair as a year later. The task force has the power to request testimony.
We will now move on to leadership selection. I will ask my colleague to share the appropriate presentation for that agenda item.
The task force will receive the administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the DOJ, which is why I am
Government Code Section 8301.2, subsection H, excuse me, provides that the task force shall elect a chair and a vice chair from among its members, and the term of office shall be for the life of the task force. Slide. The government code sections do not delineate the precise duties of the chair and the vice chair. Based on the experience of our office in staffing and supporting various boards and commissions, we anticipate the following duties for these roles. First, we anticipate the chair will collaborate with the DOJ team here to develop agenda and meeting materials for the future 9 hearings of the task force. That in future meetings, the chair will guide the task force through the agenda items and try to keep us on schedule. And finally, that the chair will lead the meeting through public comment, and every meeting will have a public comment section. Slide. We similarly expect that the vice chair will collaborate with the development of the meeting agenda and materials, and that the vice chair will fill in for the chairperson in event of unavailability for a public meeting. Slide. We have unmuted and enabled video for each of the task force members who will be seen on screen. And we now invite the task force members to discuss among themselves chair and vice selection. The discussion will culminate in hopefully a motion and a second for chair and vice, resulting in a vote, which again we will do by roll call.
Should we start by gaining interest by maybe even a show of hands or just by voice? If anyone is interested in running for, let's say, first chair of the task force?
Where am I? Oh.
You're unmuted. Everyone is unmuted. So I see Dr. Grill is interested. Okay. Dr. Reggie Jones-Sawyer, are you interested?
Actually, I'm interested in one or the other, but probably vice chair might make the most sense for me. So let's, when you get to that portion.
Okay.
And I'm open to either chair or vice chair. And the only reason I'm offering that is because I've done that before for other commissions and task forces.
And I can offer help to the chair by when, I'll just say it, that when individuals in the legislature or in DOJ or others tell you no, I can push back on it. I can be your partner in justice. That's the best way I can say that. I want to push the envelope. And,
okay. Has he made nominations?
No, they're just talking right now.
Okay.
Steve, we hear you.
How about this? Everyone is unmuted. I'm also interested in running for chair or vice chair. So if there's anyone on the task force who is not interested in running for either, I would suggest that one of you facilitate this conversation. Any volunteers?
Dr. Brown, I think, is trying to get in.
Can't hear you. I can't hear.
It should be, the leadership should be balanced out between civil rights and what else, Dr. Brown? We can't hear you, it's low.
And those who are working in legislative assembly and structure. You should have balance. Takes 2 wings for birds to fly and 2 wings for an airplane to stay in there.
Can you repeat, Camilla, what Dr. Brown said exactly? What the split should be? I couldn't quite hear it. Something
between civil rights community and those who are in the assembly of the legislature.
I agree. I agree. I agree.
For
Totally.
repeating yourself, sir.
I have a clarifying question for Dr. Brown. So do you, by the leadership structure, are you saying that one, either a chair or vice chair should be someone from the legislature, and then the chair or vice chair should be someone outside of the?
No, what I'm saying is that whoever comes in, but there should be a balance of those who are, so to speak, inside the system.
I can hear.
Of the assembly.
Right.
There should be,
There should
the
be
leadership
a
should be
person
balanced out
outside
between civil rights and what else, Dr. Brown? We can't hear you, it's low.
and the person who plays that role of the conscience.
Well, I'd like to say, and I think Camila, you can decide, but I'd like to put you forward for one of the positions. I think if we could maybe start with deciding who the two individuals will be, and then pick up you as to which role, because they do come with different responsibilities and I think time demands as well. So that has to be taken into consideration. But I just want to say that, Camila, I do think that you should be one of those individuals in one of those positions.
I agree. I would like to put forth Reggie Jones Sawyer
For Dr. Brown. So do
for
you,
one of those
by
positions,
the
whether
leadership
it's
structure, are you saying
chair or
that
vice chair.
one,
I would
either
think
a chair or vice chair should be
kind of
someone
like
from the legislature?
fit what Dr.
And
Brown
then the
states.
chair or vice chair should be someone outside of the?
No, what I'm saying is that
Even though all of you guys are more than qualified to serve in any position here, without a doubt.
so to speak, inside the system, the legislature.
Okay.
Of the assembly.
Agree. The
And there should be
idea that there should be someone who's part of the legislative body and someone who's on the
plays that
outside.
role.
And it seems that there is an interest on the part of Assembly Member.
Well, I'd like to
Jones
say,
Sawyer,
and I think
so
Camila, you can
I support
decide,
that as well.
but I'd like to.
And
put you
I'm not
forward for one of
like,
the positions.
I don't have a vested
think
interest
if we
or a
could maybe
strong
start
desire
with
to be chair. I
deciding
know what
who the
that
two individuals will
entails,
be,
but I
and
just
then
wanted to
we can
offer
then
that
pick
and
up to you
get
as
us
to
started. So
which
if there's a
role,
strong desire
because they do come
on
with
your
different
part, Camila,
responsibilities,
to
and I
be
think
chair,
time
I'm
demands as
willing to
well. So
step
that
up.
has to be taken into consideration.
Yes, there
But
is a
I just
strong
want to,
desire
for
for me
record,
to be
say that
chair, and
Camila, I do
I
think
also prepared a
that you
statement
should be one of those
if you would like
individuals
to listen to it
in one
at
of
this
those
point in time.
positions.
And I would like to put forth Reggie Jones Sawyer for one of those positions, whether it's chair or vice chair. I would think kind of like fit what Dr. Brown states.
64 years. As one who was a student of
Even though all of you guys are more than qualified to serve in any position here, without a doubt. But
concerned about how
And I agree, the idea that there should be someone who is part of the legislative body and someone who's on the outside. And it seems that there is an interest on the part of Assembly Member Jones Sawyer. And so I support that as well.
Well put.
And I'm not like, I don't have a vested interest or a strong desire to be chair. I know what that
Sure.
entails, but
Hello,
I just
everyone.
wanted
I
to
am
offer
seeking to
that
serve as
get
chair
us
for the State of
started. So if
California
there's a
Reparations
strong
Task
desire
Force. In
on your
2014,
part,
I earned a
Camila,
Bachelor of
to be
Arts in
chair,
Political Science
I'm
with
willing
minors
to
in
step back.
Education Studies and Film, TV, and Digital Media from UCLA.
Yes, there
In
is a strong
2019, I
desire for
earned a
me to be
Juris
chair,
Doctorate
and I
from Columbia
also
Law
prepared
School
a
in New York
statement.
City.
If
I
you would
attended
like
Columbia
to
Law
listen
School
to
in
it
New York
at this
City
point in
with the
time.
express
And I would
intention
say too,
of
I have
studying
a strong
reparations
desire
in
too.
depth. For example, during my first year in law school, I reached out to the academic vice provost of the entire institution to ensure that Columbia Law School offered classes on reparatory justice before I graduated, to which they happily obliged. I graduated Columbia Law School with honors as an Heartland Fiske Scholar, a recipient of the inaugural Eric H. Holder Scholarship, and as a recipient of the Parker School Recognition of Achievement in International and Comparative Law. In the same year, I participated in a program whereby I completed a dual degree and earned a Master of Laws with a specialization in international criminal law from the University of Amsterdam. In order to complete the program, I wrote and completed a thesis on international reparatory justice for the transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, and the afterlife of slavery, which was reviewed and graded by preeminent legal scholars in the fields of international law, international criminal law, and reparatory justice. I wish to serve as chair for the task force for a myriad of reasons. For one, I believe that I can provide expertise to the commission given my academic and professional background. For instance, Article 2, Section 8301.1, subsection 3A of Assembly Bill 3121 indicates that the task force shall address, quote, how the recommendations comport with international standards of remedy for wrongs and injuries caused by the state that include full reparations and special measures as understood by various international protocols, laws, and findings. Further, subsection 3B indicates that the task force shall address how the state of California will offer a formal apology on behalf of the people of California for the perpetuation of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity against Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery in the United States. Both of the aforementioned sections of this bill require an acute understanding of international law, international criminal law, and reparatory justice, and how each of these legal doctrines intersect with international and domestic laws and protocols. For example, some of the various relevant international protocols that are relevant to this discussion include, but are not limited to, the Convention on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, in which the United States is a signatory, the Genocide Convention, the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, the Proclamation of the International Decade for People of African Descent, and the basic principles and guidelines on the right to remedy and reparation for victims of gross violations of international human rights law and serious violations of international humanitarian law, or in other words, UN General Assembly Resolution 6147. Further, I wish to serve as chair or vice chair of the Reparations Task Force because I believe that I provide invaluable insight via my community organizing experience and connections. For instance, I have dedicated my time as a community organizer, and I have connected with various major organizations in the reparations space to further reparatory justice related efforts. In addition, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, I recognized the need to create a virtual community where people could still connect and learn about reparatory justice. Thus, in October 2020, I founded the Reparations Club on Clubhouse. Since its founding, the club has amassed over 10,000 members, which include professionals and influencers from various industries, as well as a few notable celebrities. Some of those featured guests have included someone who will provide expert testimony to us today, Dr. William Darity, professor and economist at Duke University, and co-author of the book From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. Other guests also have included outgoing Georgia Congressman Kwanzaa Hall, Kathy Powers, who is a legal scholar at the University of New Mexico, and Sarah Collins Rudolph, who is the sole survivor of the 1963 16th Street Baptist Church bombing located in Birmingham, Alabama. In all, I believe that I am fully equipped and well-rounded, which is evident by my dedication of my academic and professional career to studying, amplifying, and critically engaging in efforts related to reparatory justice for Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery in the United States. Thus, it would be an honor to serve as chair, preferably, or vice chair of the Reparations Task Force. Thank you for your patience.
So my clear and understanding is there's no one else interested in the position? Just to facilitate getting us to a point to vote.
Can I make a couple comments? I'm not interested. I think this should be led by African Americans, for obvious reasons. I just want to say, given the background of each of you all, I'd be comfortable with any of you serving as the leadership of this task force. I agree with the approach about that Dr. Brown raised about legislative and also civil rights advocacy. I would add that at least based upon the Japanese American redress and reparations effort, it's important that the leadership have experience in convening because there's a certain amount of synthesizing that goes on in connection with integrating everybody's thoughts, and sometimes they'll be very consistent, but I would anticipate at some point they'll be conflicting. And so the leadership helps in smoothing over the rough places and synthesizing into so that the goal is to get the body to move in one direction with unanimity. So that's an important skill. As I look at the resumes of each of you, I mean, they're so impressive. each of you have had experience in that, decades, some of you. So, but I just want to point out, I think that's a very important skill that the leadership has to have, or should have.
May I give an addendum here? As we're dealing with history, let us remember that when that first gathering was held in 1865, January the 12th, in Savannah, Georgia, many black preachers were in that gathering. And it was Reverend Garrison Frazier who spoke up to Mr. Trump and said, why can't we have 40 acres and a mule so we'll be able to build our communities, take care of our families, be self-sustaining. And that field order number 15 would have empowered us economically, academically, culturally, etc. Next, I would like to mention that in terms of the community base of the black community, whether you go to church or not every Sunday, or you are different religious persuasion, black faith community is the base of the black community. And we're going to need support and buttress. And I feel that this task force can at best be a dream team, which diverse skills, backgrounds, experiences are pulled together, and it becomes a we thing, not I or their thing. I'm for unity. I have an international experience, and this coming August the 22nd, August the 22nd, 22, not around, right around the corner. We have an election coming up too. But thanks to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who were not all racist, that was Brigham Young, but it was Joseph Smith, who was an abolitionist in New York State. And what's happening today? That denominational body is dealing with its checkered past, and they will be given a multi-million-dollar gift to the NAACP. 70 young people from our faith communities and the NAACP network will be taken to Ghana, West Africa, so they will become, as Du Bois said, missionaries of culture, justice, and self-help. Come back to the United States of America and push for a better day for our people. I think that's why, and I'm not being self-serving in saying this, but I think that's why I bring to the table that kind of comprehensive, broad-based support system in order that we might work together and follow with the opportunity that Governor Newsom has given us. Dr. Weber was the social engineer of, bring to a reality. A solid, significant, soulful, stellar reparations package.
I'm going to just jump in here and say, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to jump in here and say, just also lift what Don Tamaki just said. I think that you are all tremendous. I'm in awe of all of you, and you can all provide just profound leadership. One thing that's important to me is that there is gender balance in our leadership. I think it's critical that the leadership is representative of both male and female perspectives. And with that said, I would love to see that dynamic in our leadership.
Is there anywhere in the bylaws that there couldn't be two vice chairs? Or is it clearly stated just one of each? One chair for sure. Is it possible to have two vice chairs? And the only reason I say this, as I stated, I think this is an amazing group. Anyone could step into the leadership mantle and hit the ground running. But when you look at the historical aspects of what Dr. Brown has meant, not only to the state and to the nation, I think it would send a great signal, not only to California, but the rest of the nation, how serious we are about this. And this is no slight on Attorney Moore. She's brilliant, she's passionate. But I would strongly support Dr. Brown. I too was leaning toward the gender balance here. And unfortunately, we don't have a female legislative person part of the committee. I have no desire to serve in any one of those capacities. And like I say, if our bylaws would allow us to bifurcate the vice chair, I would definitely move to nominate both Attorney Moore and Mr. Jones Sawyer.
Senator here, and again, this is Sarah Belchin, your legal counsel. I have to provide the legal perspective, which is that we don't have bylaws, but we are guided by the statute that speaks to one chair and one vice chair. We are also guided by Bagley-Keene and the rule of two. And when three people gather about official business, which we would have with a chair and two vice chairs, we risk violating the rule of two and violating Bagley-Keene on a persistent basis. So we had not considered this. My off-the-cuff response to you is that I would not advise you to have a chair and two vice chairs.
Sarah, may I also ask a procedural question? As a task force, are we following Robert's rules?
Yes, my understanding is that meetings of state bodies, and here the legislators will be the experts, meetings of state bodies typically follow Robert's Rules of Order, and we should endeavor to do the same.
Okay. So then that means that at some point, someone will need to make a motion.
That's correct.
I'll make a motion nominating Dr. Amos Brown as chair of the Reparations Task Force. Can I get a second?
I would second that motion. I think he would bring a great moral authority to the task force and recognizable, identifiable voice.
We don't have a chair at the moment, so we don't, how do we advance this motion?
We will roll call a vote on the motion on the floor, which is Dr. Amos Brown as chair of the Reparations Task Force. As we did this morning, we will go in alphabetical order among the task force members to roll call this vote, beginning with Senator Bradford.
Aye.
Dr. Brown?
Did we lose you, Sarah?
Sorry, Dr. Grills. I didn't hear Dr. Brown's vote, but I'm sure one of my team members did and will tell me. Dr. Grills?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Dr. Brown. Dr. Grills?
No.
Lisa Holder?
Hi.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer?
Not voting.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer abstains. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis?
Nay.
Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp?
Nay.
Camila Moore,
Nay.
Don Tamaki. I'm sorry, Don, I need you to repeat that one more time.
Aye.
Okay. Assemblymember Jones Sawyer, I need to ask if you were going to reconsider your abstention because it is a tie vote at 4 yeas and 4 nays.
And so your ruling is it doesn't move forward, and you, as opposed to getting another nomination?
I believe that you'd need more yays than nays to advance the motion on the floor. I'm open to other interpretations from the experts in Robert's rules, but I do not believe that a tie vote advances the motion.
No. The tie vote kills it.
Okay, the motion does not
A tie vote does not kill under Robert's Rule of Order. It does not kill it.
What does it do?
The abstention follows the majority. The abstention follows the majority.
It's still 4-4.
Can we make another nomination?
Fine.
Because I'll nominate myself for chair.
So no is my answer. Now go to the next.
I would like to nominate myself for chair and putting the motion on the floor.
That's not Robert's rules. You can't nominate yourself.
I move to
I didn't know
nominate Camila Moore for chair of the task force.
And I will second.
Okay, the motion on the floor that's been seconded is Camila Moore for chair of the task force. We will vote yay, nay, beginning in alphabetical order, again with Senator Bradford.
No.
Moving on to Dr. Brown.
No.
Dr. Grills.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Dr. Grills.
Yes, aye.
Lisa Holder.
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer.
Aye.
Dr. Javon Scott Lewis.
Aye.
Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp.
Aye.
Camila Moore.
Aye, if I can vote for myself.
Don Tamaki.
Aye.
Okay. By a vote of 7 ayes to 2 nays, the task force has elected Camila Moore as chair. We still need to move
Well,
on
I make a
now.
motion now that we nominate Dr. Amos Brown as vice chair.
And I second that motion, even understanding the issues that were suggested by the assembly member, that inside-outside balance. But technically, our assembly member is inside and is a part of this task force, so could still perform the tasks that might be needed.
You have 2 members that could fill that role. So yes, I'm fine with Dr. Brown as vice chair, if that's the will of the body.
Okay, so their motion on the floor with a second is Dr. Amos Brown as vice chair of the task force. We'll proceed to vote. Senator Bradford.
Aye.
Dr. Brown.
Aye.
Dr. Grills.
Aye.
Lisa Holder.
Aye.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer.
Not voting.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer abstains. Dr. Javon Scott Lewis.
Aye.
Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp.
Aye.
Camila Moore,
Abstain, not voting.
Camila Moore abstains. Don Tamaki.
Aye.
Okay, by a vote of 7-0 with 2 abstentions, the task force has elected Dr. Amos Brown as vice chair. We will now pause in case the chair or the vice would like to make brief remarks, having assumed a leadership role.
Ladies first.
I would just like to thank the task force and the community for your support, and I'm looking forward to chairing the task force. Thank you.
I would like to express my deepest appreciation to everyone. As I said in my remarks, I'm a weed brother in this endeavor. And I think it is a significant thing, too, Dr. Moore, the chair, and the Vice President of the United States of America, Ms. Kamala Harris, is a member of Third Baptist Church that serves as her spiritual base. And we have a wonderful team. So let's get to work.
I would just add that, sorry, that there's a cross-generational team approach, which is terrific. As I said, Dr. Brown, what better imprimatur, that could the task force have than his name and reputation? And Kamala Moore, young activist lawyer, works for me. So thank you.
Okay, I want to thank the task force members for their active participation up to this point. We will be muting your videos and your audio for our expert presentation, which is coming up next. And as we prepare for that next agenda item, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our presenters. Kristen Mullen and William Darity are the co-authors of From Here to Equality, which we've all read. Kristen is a folklorist and the founder of Artifactual, an arts consulting practice, and Carolina Circuit Writers, a literary consortium that brings expressive writers of color to the Carolinas. Professor Darity is the Samuel Du Bois Cook Distinguished Professor of Public Policy, African and African American Studies and Economics at the Duke University Sanford School of Public Policy. We are excited and very grateful that they can join us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. We are, as was introduced, A. Kirsten Mullen and William A. Sandy Darity Jr. We are grateful for the opportunity to contribute to this important discovery process. We would like to acknowledge the support and guidance we've received from the California Department of Justice team of Jasleen Singh, Kamwarup Singh, Ziyun Yang, and Aisha Martin Walton. We are deeply grateful to Lucas Hubbard for research assistance and technical expertise. Next slide, please. There are many ways to define reparations. The compact edition of the Oxford English Dictionary lists several. Reconciliation, to bring a person into friendly agreement with another after an argument. The act of restitution, the act of restoring to a former state. The restoration or renewal of a thing or a state of being. The act of repairing or mending. Assemblymember Reginald Jones Sawyer in his introduction invoked America's founding father, Thomas Paine, who said, we have the power to begin the world again. In 1775, Paine also advocated for the abolition of slavery and for the allocation of land to the formerly enslaved. I quote Thomas Paine, "Perhaps some could give them lands upon reasonable rent, some employing them in their labor, still might give them some reasonable allowance for it, so as all may have some property and fruits of their labors at their own disposal and be encouraged to industry, the family may live together and enjoy the natural satisfaction of exercising relative affections and duties with their civil protections and other advantages like their fellow men and women, I'll add. Another definition of reparations, the act of making amends for a wrong done. But today, when we, Kirsten Mullen and William Darity, talk about the case for African American reparations, we are referring to a plan of action Another definition of reparations, the act of making amends for a wrong done. But today, when we, Kirsten Mullen, acknowledgement, recognition and admission of the wrong by the perpetrators or beneficiaries of the injustice. Next slide, please. Excuse me. The responsible party, the one that has done wrong, is said to be culpable. They must publicly state and admit they are aware of the harm they have done. Within the past week, on 28th of May, Germany acknowledged its role in the Herero Nama genocide that took place in Namibia between 1904 and 1908, and indicated it would pay 1.3 billion US dollars in restitution. At least 75,000 people were murdered. In 2020, Germany offered $11.7 million in reparations, which was rejected by Namibian President Hage Geingob. Angela Merkel's spokesperson clarified the country's response in current time, saying the funds would be utilized to develop districts where descendants of the victims resided and will not take the form of reparations payments to individuals. This is a gesture of reconciliation, they maintain, but not legally binding reparations. It appears that the Namibian government may not accept this current offer either, which comes to about $2,680 per member of the Herero Nama communities. Germany has yet to acknowledge the genocidal acts it committed in modern-day Tanzania during the Maji Maji Rebellion of 1905 to 1907. Another example is the genocide of nearly 500,000 people in Uganda under Idi Amin from 1971 to 1979. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So redress, I believe we skipped a slide. Thank you. Yes, redress, restitution, or compensation. In 2006, Morocco compensated victims of the so-called Days of Lead, a period of intense human rights violations from the mid-1960s to the 1980s under the reign of King Hassan II. Germany has paid $89 billion in restitution to Holocaust victims and an additional $662 million since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. Redress, restitution, or compensation. Compensation the US government already has given include payments to Japanese Americans incarcerated during World War II, payments to families who lost loved ones during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Some 47 of those individuals were from California. Payments to victims of the Boston Marathon bombings. Payments to those Americans taken hostage in Iran. Next slide, please. Japanese American reparations. 82,219 Japanese Americans who had been unlawfully interned received the uniform payment of $20,000. And a letter written here by Ronald Reagan included a formal apology admitting the US government's decision to incarcerate Japanese Americans during World War was illegal. Next slide, please. So redress, one American approach. In an extraordinary reparations case, payments to US citizens who were held hostage in Iran occurred as a consequence of 2015 legislation. So funds went to the former hostages or to their estates. Spouses and children were authorized to receive lump sums of up to $600,000. The bill also provided an additional $2.8 billion for 9/11 victims and their families. Payments were to be made within a year. Individuals who already had received $20 million or more from other lawsuits may not have been eligible to receive the entire $4.3 million award. Americans who were in the American Embassy in Kenya in 1998, when it was bombed, have been awarded $3 million each as part of the State Department settlement with Sudan. 224 people who were killed in the 1998 bombings in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, and 54 of those individuals were embassy employees or contractors. And then in the American Embassy hostage case, those individuals also received compensation for their temporary loss of freedom. But this is the only case that we're aware of anywhere in the world where individuals who were victims of abuse were awarded $10,000 per day of their abuse. And note here, at the same rate, the compensation for a Black American enduring a single decade of Jim Crow would be $36.5 million. Next slide, please. Closure. Closure is achieved after an account is settled, a debt has been paid. No more claims will be made on the responsible party by the victimized community as long as there is no renewal of atrocities and no new harms are inflicted. Next slide. So what are not reparations? These are our perspectives. Social programs are not reparations, affirmative action is not reparations, and reversing harmful policies without also providing adequate compensation for their effects. None of these things, in our view, are reparations. Other reparations proponents have suggested that these types of steps are acts of redress. However, our personal view is that these steps are not compensation for the harm. They may stop the harms, but they are not restitution for the harms. These are important steps to take, particularly if there are ongoing practices in the state of California that perpetuate racial harm. But under the terms of the definition that we offer, these steps are not reparations. We certainly feel the task force should consider ending any policies that are producing ongoing harms. Next slide, please. Reparations cases for other groups based on past atrocities in California. Asian Americans, Chinese American massacre in Los Angeles of 1871, and then Native Americans. California gained statehood in 1850. Between 1849 and 1870, it is conservatively estimated that American colonists murdered some 9,500 Californian natives. One relevant question: were large numbers of Native Americans in California marched out of the state or marched to reservations? Next slide, please. Atrocities directed at the Latinx community with Dodger Stadium and Chavez Ravine, the Bracero program of 1941 to 1964, exploitation of farm workers, Cesar Chavez and United Farm Workers in Action, and then note of the Zoot Suit Riot of 1943. Next slide, please. So why reparations? There are arenas in which past atrocities make the case for reparations for Black American descendants of U.S. slavery. The institution of slavery, racialized terror, political participation, voting rights, accumulation.
Hi, family. That's not me. Okay. They're having some technical difficulties. As you see, this has pretty much taken over my midday wake up call. I might bring that segment to you later this evening, along with your anti Black racism report. But while they're glitching and buffering over there, I just want to give us a round of applause. This is what leaning in looks like, family. This is what not giving up, not giving in, not giving out looks like. You guys have got to understand that you've got to push past the negative Neds and the negative Nancys that constantly remind you how reparations will never happen. It is because of the grassroots, formerly the ADOS movement. That was us. And I'm giving all the credit and all the praise to those of us who established chapters all throughout the country. This is what we've given birth to. I give us all a round of applause for enduring all of what we've grown through since our inception 2 years ago when Kamala announced her run for presidency. I commend each and every one of you for showing up, for getting the political education. This is as much your victory all over the country as it is for us here as the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, formerly ADOS California. You have to understand what it means when I put out the directive for you guys to call in, for you guys to tweet, for you guys to hit them up all over social media. Your yes has enabled us to get to where we are. You have to understand something. We literally had to rescind one of the persons who takes credit for having founded this movement from consideration for the commission. And we have a native South Central attorney who just got elected as the chair of the AB3121. Forgive the background. That's them on my DMs, okay? Like, we're constantly at work. But Miss Camila Moore is with CJEC. She is with NAASDLA. She is one of our very own that overstands cash reparations. She now chairs this commission. Okay? This is so huge because she knows how we're wired. She knows what we fight for because she is one of us. I'm on the DMs right now trying to organize a celebration for CJEC here in Southern California on Juneteenth. This is so huge that through all of what we've been through, all of the dragging that we've endured, the implosion of our movement, the lies, the haters, the perpetrators, the grifters, staying on our square, showing up to educate the masses, showing up to advocate for our people, showing up to make the case for reparations, to weaponize the vote, to rally allies. It has not been in vain. And today marks that victory. This is huge because you have to understand that the way of California goes the nation and everything. And so what this commission will do will help to frame statewide reparations all throughout the country. We're leading the charge. And we've got our very own Camila at the head of it. That is the power of the reparationist movement and the power of us as grassroots to not give in, not give up, not give out. That's what you're bearing witness to in real time. And so I commend each and every one of you because you are as much a part of what you see taking shape today as we are here in California. We don't sleep. And so what we're doing is showing you by example how to get this done in your state. You will get checks from the state. You will get checks from the feds. And we're here to help you guys get it done in your respective states. But it's not just showing up on this show. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes. Tons of meetings, tons of votes, tons of Senate hearings. You got to make yourself available. If you care at all, you must get into this fight. If you're not already in this fight, you must get into this fight because our entire lineage depends on closing the over $100 trillion egregious racial wealth gap. So you've got to stop believing that it won't happen. And let's put a collective energy around it happening in the trillions over multi-generations as we are old. Okay? You must put more energy into that because that is what faith is. And faith without works is dead. You must understand that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things yet to be seen. And if it weren't for our ancestors who believed we deserved to be free, that we were men and women of God, not chattel. If it weren't for their collective consciousness around us becoming free, we'd still be in chains. It took 400 plus years to get one of our very own, from our very own movement, to sit on the chair of the Reparations Task Force AB3121. Imagine all the people fighting for reparations had they not continued to lean in and bought into the negative Neds and negative Nancy's purview, that reparations would never happen. Where would we be? Probably as extinct as the Indians. Had they not persisted right where they were, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we have in just 2 years. Almost to the date. This movement formed when Kamala threw her hat in the ring on MLK Jr. Day. It actually formed before then. I can speak for myself as a co-founder of ADOS SoCal, one of the founding members. It was after Kamala announced her run for president on Howard's campus. In 2 years, but it took everyone from since before MLK Jr. pushing for the reparations for this day to happen. And now we've got one of our very own. Public comments at 2 p.m. Oh, okay. Well, that's in an hour. Thank you, Shanna. I need to share the link with you guys. Let me get the link so you can do public comments. Hold on. Okay, just a second, family. I don't have audio. How do we join the Zoom? Just a picture. Can we get a message out to them? Can we get a message out to the commission that we cannot hear, we can only see? Question mark. Okay, let me share it here. Like to join the comments. Hold on, guys. Here's a script. Let me copy and paste this into the chat so you will have it and be able to publicly comment per the script or any formation of this script. I'm going to email it to myself and paste it here. Stand by. What's the blue jeans? Hold on, guys. This is happening real time. Okay, let me send what I've got, guys, until I can get more information. I don't know what blue jeans is. I am oblivious to a blue jean. They said no video and audio will be muted during the break. Blue Jeans Network. Okay, I'm sharing two things. Stand by. You guys can do this direct. Some chat platform, exactly. You need the actual link. They're still training me, honey. My daughter's in school, so just give me a second, family. I gotta copy and paste like the old school, okay? I'm gonna copy and paste over here, just a second. The rep perspective. Give me a second, fam. I'm taking it from the DMs. I beg your patience. But you can copy and paste and do this, okay? Just let them know you're calling from CJAC, calling from California when you make a public comment. Hold on. I'm copying the blue jeans, okay? Just kidding. Oh, Lord. Okay, let me send it to myself and copy and paste all of this in the chat. It may break up in the chat, okay? So the script mentions Camila for chair. That goal has been achieved. Exactly. So modify it as you need to, okay? The direct link. Hi, Asa. I'm giving you the direct link, okay? Just a second. I have to copy and paste from the DMs. All right. Let's see here. Hold on, guys. This is crazy. Okay, just give me a second. Oh, God. Where is the Blue Jeans? That's Blue Jeans is an app, guys. Okay. Hold on. It's okay. Join the comments. Let me just copy all these links. Copy. Okay, it just finally populated, y'all. I'm coming back. They are on a break, it appears. Here we go, guys. There's a script, a way to comment live, and the Blue Jeans thingy. It split it up, okay? So just know it did over here in my chat. The dial-in is in the agenda. Do y'all see the CBC and Boulay and Tulsa dancing in the street like they got tangibles today? Yeah, they're dancing and pandering. They've got an election. Okay, so yes, I put it in the chat. Harris is not us. She is Jamaican Indian. Those old fools need to stop the buck dancing for hue and not lineage and the cost that was endured by Native Blacks. Reek, oh my, this is what makes this such a victory today. To have Camila from CJEC, NAASD, LA, be the chair, she knows all too well. Okay, she said there's 2 dial-in numbers. Roland Martin is there. He is the same guy that said it was a pipe dream for us to get reparations. By the way, he is Haitian. So why is he speaking on our justice claim, especially when he talked about how it would never happen? He was, you see, him and Boyce Watkins, all these cats, okay, were talking against reparations until we made it a household name. Give ourselves a round of applause for pushing beyond the coonery and staying focused on the reparations. All opportunists. You're right, Shanna. Shanna, can you please put the dial-in numbers for the audience that is watching it live from over here? Please put the numbers where they can call in and comment live. I put the links on how you can actually, have a voice. I thought we were bots. Come on, Rico, my. Come on. Yes, we've been through it, dragged by folks who are now trying to co-opt the narrative, all the while still doing this. They can't get it done. They can't get it done. They can't get it done. They're still non-believers. Okay, from the Google. Let me see if I can do it over here, sis. Let me open it up and see if I can like to join the comments. Okay, I'm going to go right into the text and I'm going to paste it here, sweetheart. Don't worry, I found it. Okay. Copy. Hold on, guys. I'm coming. I got it right here, sis. Thank you for trying. Hi, Toothy. I didn't get a notification. Darling, I'm being shadow banned. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and please join my email list at thereprospect.com because they disabled me from Facebook. They don't like me talking about Aronike nor transgender tray and that whole agenda to stop the flow of Black babies and Black families. So they don't like me talking against Biden and Kabama. So that's their stuff. So I've created my own. Visit me at the Rep Prospect and get on the email list. I am in the process, family, of becoming my own YouTube, my own Facebook, my own Patreon, really. I am in the process of downloading all of my videos for the last 2 years and uploading them onto my website. So please, yes, go to the Rep Prospect because in a minute, you'll just see me going live, but where you can watch the archives will be on my site. That way, if ScrewTube decides they don't like me advocating for ADOX in the way that I do, they don't like me telling them like a TI is, they don't like me telling the TR roof, then you'll be able to get a notification as to where to find me. Because they have reminded me when they disabled me on Facebook, that ain't mine. And if they don't want me talking for on behalf of ADOX and reparations, then they can, with the flip of a switch, shut it down. So, yeah, please join the email list because I'm going to be going live with every one of these meetings so you guys can see the process. It'll just be a whole nother series within the Reparations Perspective channel because not everybody's interested in the work. They'll cash the checks, but they're not interested in what it takes to get a check in the first place. You know, those of us that have been chosen show up. And so I'm grateful to you for that. So please, for those who want to get in the fight for the reparationist movement, you can Gmail me more immediately for that at thereprospect@gmail. I'm putting it right here. Because just like you guys help us get it done here, we're here to help you get it done wherever you are. It's grassroots. We work with each other. Thereprospect@gmail if you want to join the reparationist movement, which is a culmination of all the grassroots from all over the country. It's not just an exclusive club like that of the ADOS movement was, or what it morphed into, because that's not what I ever intended when I co-founded the chapter, okay, for California. I intended always to work with other grassroots interested in getting this done. Shanna says, rules for public comments, first come basis and up to 2 minutes, then they will mute your mic. Okay, must go through Blue Jeans for the public comments per the agenda at the bottom. Now, Blue Jeans is an app. Let me share that link again because it got chopped up. Hold on. Hold on, family. I got to get back to the Gmail. Here is the Blue Jeans. Copy, link address, and I'm going to paste it in the stream, y'all. So make sure you copy and paste this. That way you can comment. Comments will not be allowed via phone. Shanna, Will they be able to hear the comments, or do we copy and paste the script? I'm unclear. Let me ask in the DMs if you know. You might be in the DMs. They are blowing up my phone, so I can't keep up. Okay, so blue jeans. Hold on. Can we speak in blue jeans? Okay, well, I just asked the steering committee, which I'm privileged to be on for CJAC, and they'll let me know, and I'll let you know. I just asked them if I can speak, if we can speak in the blue jeans. But yes, family, don't listen to the negative Nancys, the negative Neds. Get your reparations. Lean in. If you need to learn how, reach out to me, and I will put you in touch with the people that get this done down here. It ain't just me. It's a collective. Uh-oh. Are they back? I'm going to keep this going. It says don't go anywhere because I've got to go to court. So I'm not going to turn this off. It'll go until it's finished. The logistics are at the bottom of the agenda in bold. Okay, let me paste that.
Welcome to the show. I'm Zerlina Maxwell. There are so many different levels to the Republicans' assault on democracy right now that sometimes I know it's hard to keep track, but here goes.
Okay. Yeah, they're only allowing up to 2 minutes. That's true. Hold on, guys. Let me stop that because my whole thing. Let me try this blue jeans thing. Hold on. I'm trying to download this thing over here so that I can patch you guys into the blue jeans so we can continue watching. Hold on 1 second, family. Just, I'm not the most technical, but I'm trying over here. Your name, join as a guest. Okay, I'm going to join as a guest. Angela, Nirvana. My email address, the rep perspect at Gmail. .com. Okay. I'm going to share the screen so y'all can see, okay? I want y'all to know how to do this. You can click on the link, blue jeans, share. Okay, so you see here, I clicked on the link. I'm putting my name, I'm putting my email. I'm joining as a guest right now from my computer. Okay. AB3121. The event is live. You are in a view and listen only and cannot be seen or heard. Okay. Let me stop and come back in with the audio. That way, when they resume, you guys will be able to hear it if you don't want to weigh in. But you have everything you need to weigh in, okay? But I have to put the audio. Otherwise, It'll just be playing and you won't hear it. So let me go back in. Sharing. Okay, so they are on a break. Trying to see if I can get this screen. Okay, that's the full screen, I think. Hold on, guys. This is my first time in this app. Okay, I hope you can see it. Okay, when they start talking again, I will go live. So I'm going to stop this because it's at 2 hours, 19 minutes and 47 seconds. I'm going to stop it, sign into my court case at 1:30. And as soon as they start back talking, I'm going to make this live again, family. So go into primetime.bluejeans.com. Click on that link. I'm going to stop it, but you should still be able to copy and paste that link to get in, to make comments, and look at the script I just sent in a link up above. Thank you for joining the live. We'll be back. As soon as they start talking, I'll be back. Love you guys. Black, I love you strong. Congratulations. Peace. I'll be back.